Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk him off. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another DodgerHeads live postgame show presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and joining me tonight is Anthony Witrado. Anthony, second time you and I have been on since the All-Star break. Dodgers, in some sense, are rolling. 5-game winning streak now. Tonight got a little bit dicey, but they hung on.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not a coincidence. 5 in a row. We've been on twice during this time after a break where we didn't appear together for a while. Look, I'm not saying it's, not saying it's a thing, but at this point it's a thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can't argue with the results, right? So we want to thank all of you who are tuning in live tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Of course, we're going to recap the 5-2 win, talk a little Gavin Lux. I'll also get Anthony's reaction to James Paxton being designated for assignment, give him a chance to sort of share some thoughts on that. We're going to touch on the latest rumor, which is the big one kind of involves Randy Arozarena. I know that a lot of fans have been sort of clamoring for him, so there's kind of an interesting update on that. And of course, we'll leave some time for questions at the end. But a reminder, if you do want us to discuss a specific topic or you have a certain question you want to answer, Super Chat is the way to go. We'll put it up on the screen. We'll get to it. And it also helps our channel grow, which we definitely appreciate. And if you are tuning in right now on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring the notification bell. And if you're not, maybe come check us out on YouTube at some point and do all that. That way you don't miss anything. We have a lot of live content planned for you guys to finish out this week leading up to the trade deadline, different daily updates that we're putting up as well. And we're also available wherever you get your podcasts. So a big thank you to our audio listeners as well. And one final thing, you guys know, before we get into our show, I like to give a shout out to our sponsor, So Rare. If you haven't heard, they have a July chase for the rest of this month where they're giving away $100,000 in cash prizes for all competition levels. It includes $1,000 to the winner of free-to-play competition. That's not something they've always done, so definitely take advantage of that. If you want to sign up, check out the link. It's in the description of this video or of the podcast if you are listening to us in an audio version. So, all right, Anthony, let's get into, like I said, Dodgers on a 5-game winning streak. They went into the All-Star break absolutely struggling, swept by the Phillies, lose a series to the Tigers, kind of regroup a little bit. Tonight's game specifically, Landon Knack went 5 innings, probably one of his best starts of the season, if not the best outing. He allowed just 1 run. He exited with a 4-1 lead. Gavin Lux provided some early offense with a 2-run double in the first. Shohei Ohtani drove in 2 of his own with a double in the 4th inning. Ohtani then smoked an RBI single in the 8th inning. I think it was 114 off the bat or something.
14, yeah.
That ended up, kind of being enough for the Dodgers. Alex Vesia and Evan Phillips let it get a little bit interesting there in the 9th inning. Let's go to the beginning, though. There's been a lot of talk about floors and ceilings with Dodgers pitchers and Landon Knack in particular. How impressive was he tonight?
Yeah, he was really good. It's a smallish sample size still. If he were in a regular part of the rotation, he'd be about a third of the way through. I think tonight was his 9th or 10th start of the season, something like that. And he's got an ERA just above 3. And that's solid, especially when you're looking at a guy who is probably a middle of the rotation, back of the rotation type of arm for you. Even now, even with all the injuries, that's kind of where he slots in. Pretty impressive. I really like he's shown some poise, and I think that with some of the young Dodger starters, it's either been there or it's been completely absent. And with him, I think the fact that he's been able to show that really has allowed him to be as consistent as he's been. And, you talk about the floor and ceiling conversation. I think it really raises his floor. And right now, that's just kind of what the Dodgers need. They don't need a guy who is, will he or won't he be the ace this season? They need a guy who's not going to have the bottom fall out every third start that he goes out there. And right now, Knack has been a guy who's been pretty reliable.
Yeah, let's pause the conversation on Landon Knack because we do have our first super chat of the night. Cordenaz, who I think you did one for either Scott and I yesterday or maybe Daniel and I. So I appreciate the support and you joining our live shows. It says, besides a bit of command issue at the beginning and bad calls from the ump, he pitched amazing, 8 of 10 tonight. So his super chat actually was perfectly timed. It still is about Landon Knack. And yeah, I think the one sort of still maturation next step I would like to see him take is, not necessarily, and some of it's not entirely his fault. It is, I think, Dodgers planning, but to go past the 5th inning,
Sure.
see him, and I don't hold Landon accountable completely because, like I said, I know that is some of the planning. Dave Roberts going into the start tonight said basically anywhere from 22 to 24 batters faced is what the Dodgers envision from him. So, he is kind of playing with some restraints in place, but
yeah,
as great as he has been, like you said, and they've needed every bit of it just with the way injuries have gone. Bobby Miller, as we've discussed, at length, has not been what was expected of him so far. Walker Buehler has also struggled in his quest to return from a significant surgery. So Landon Knack, even if it is only 5 innings every time, it's been absolutely necessary, like you said, and a credit to him that his poise is there. And, there haven't really been outings where he completely gets shelled and it looks like he's just lost out there.
Yeah, and I think, the chat's talking about, he sort of overcame the umpires and, he did have some command issues early on. And I think that's what I'm talking about there with that poise is that, he did not let it get to him to the point where he sort of got off of his game. He pitched through it and, he got a result. And so I wouldn't be totally surprised if we get into September and they start trying to give him 3 more outs an outing. Maybe if they're thinking that he's going to have to pitch in October, that could be a thing. And, if he is going to give you 5, let's say he is in the rotation. If he's giving you 5 of these kinds of innings, you can suck up those other 4 innings, I think. You know what I mean? I think they'd be totally fine with that. It's the 5 innings, 3 runs, 5 innings, 4 runs that really kills you. So if he's going 5 and giving up 1, I think that's something that they would take. There's no doubt about it, especially in October, and especially if he's the 3 or 4 starter in that rotation at that point. So yeah, we would obviously like to see him go deeper, and maybe that's the next step in his progression. But like you said, this is not a Landon Knack thing. This is a Dodger organizational thing, and how they're going to bring him along now. Like I said, maybe it'll be interesting to keep an eye on if that's how it goes for the rest of the season. It wouldn't surprise me if they start to extend him a little bit in about a month or so. But yeah, right now, so far, so good.
Yeah, and you mentioned the bullpen. They were doing their job tonight until I don't want to say they weren't, but then Alex Vesia came in, 5-1 lead in the 9th. There's been you haven't been on with us. There was Evan Phillips. Dave Roberts said he didn't say Evan Phillips isn't the closer anymore, but he definitely alluded to that there will be additional situations that Phillips is pitching that aren't the 9th inning.
Yeah.
Whether that was the case tonight or the fact that it just wasn't at least a save opportunity, or I think it still was a save for opportunity for Vesia, right?
I think they had a 4-run lead. No?
Okay. No. Yeah, you're right. So, whether that was part of the planning side or not, Vesia comes in, struggles. His pitch count got up to 26 pitches. I think, that was part of the reason why they went to Evan Phillips at that point.
Yeah.
Comes in.
Vesia clearly he didn't have it. He had no feel for that fastball. Smith visited, Pryor visited.
Yeah.
They tried to mix in some off-speed stuff, and the fastball never got on track for him. So I think aside from the pitch count, I think that was a bigger part of it.
Yeah, great point. And Evan Phillips comes in, and he looks like he doesn't have it necessarily yet either. Walks Jorge Soler, but then to load the bases, but then gets out of it. The Phillips piece, are you surprised that maybe Dave Roberts came out and said, yes, we're basically going to move him around into still leverage situations, but if it's in the 7th inning, we're going to use him there, as opposed to because the example I used with, I believe it was Blake and Scott. We're doing so many different live shows and recordings, I'm losing track of who I'm saying things to. But the example I gave was in the past when Kenley struggled. Dave said, he's our closer. We're sticking with him. He's going to be closing games. He didn't really do that with Evan Phillips.
No, and I think that Kenley's track record of being a shutdown closer in for several seasons before they got to that stretch where he was, a little inconsistent, I think really played into it. Also, we've seen since Kenley Jansen has left, his attachment to that role, and so I think they were probably a little gun shy in taking that away from him and what it could do. But talking about the now, I think it's a bit of the split situation with Phillips. And then also I think that he doesn't have that track record. He hasn't been their shutdown closer for years. He just sort of got into that role last season, had a really good year. And they were, I think they were careful even going into this season saying like, well, we'll kind of see, we'll play it out. I don't think they named a definitive closer. And now we are where we are, and with sort of that back end of the bullpen. And I think it's probably the smartest way to go. It's matchup dependent a little bit. It depends on where the other team's at in the order, what the leverage might be. And so I think they're really trying to, and I think like tonight, like even with I think it was a 4-run lead, there were some lefties coming up for the Giants. And so I think Vesia was probably still that choice. I think right now, with the lack of somebody who's just completely dominant and getting guys out on both sides, this is probably the best way to go. It's also why I said the other day on one of our shows that I kind of think they need a leveraged reliever at the deadline. They need a lot of things. Like, we don't need to get into all of that yet, but it would not surprise me if they try to extract a good reliever from somebody, and maybe it's a package deal. And hey, we'll take a Arozarena, but we also want somebody out of your bullpen, something like that.
Yeah, or they just make a trade for Kenley Jansen, then you have your closer again. It tends to be a polarizing comment every time I say it. The reactions have not been overwhelmingly popular. I'll leave it at that. Let's move on to our next subject. Gavin Lux. He was named National League Player of the Week. Admittedly, it was a short stretch because of the All-Star break. It was more of, as Daniel called it, National League Player of the Weekend. Lux went hitless on Monday, but bounced back tonight. 2 more hits. Drove in a couple runs, like I mentioned early in the first inning. Is it time to start believing in a Gavin Lux turnaround?
Look, me and Jeff were 2 of the last people on the train on that wagon with Gavin Lux. We both jumped off a little while ago, though. Not gonna lie. But you know what? I was texting with some people tonight after he hit that double, and they said that during the All-Star break he went back to Wisconsin and he worked out with some family that he trusts, some baseball family. And they went to one of the local colleges out there in Kenosha, in the Kenosha area, and really worked on some things with sort of his mechanics and stuff like that. And he, according to them, when he left Wisconsin, he felt really comfortable and in a kind of a good headspace. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know how much of that is all translating, if it's just coincidence or what, but, something is working for him right now. I really do want to believe, not just because I held on to that stock for so long, but because I think they need him, for whether he stays with this organization or not. They need him to be productive, whether it's for them or to raise his trade value or whatever the situation may be. But he's the guy they were counting on to really lift the bottom of that order. Remember, I think coming into the season, the whole thought was like, man, if he hits 9th and he can really start to take those next steps, boy, when he's on base for Mookie and Ohtani and Freddie, like that was sort of what the ideal version of this lineup was. And then it just didn't pan out for him. But if he can really start to produce at just a serviceable rate, right? Like, give us a 100 OPS plus or something like that. Like, let's start at that baseline now. Yeah. That it's a boost for them, because considering how bad the bottom of that order has been, if he can do something like that and get going, that's a huge win for them.
Yeah. I think, he struggled for so long this season. And I know you and I did, you and Jeff, like you said, you guys hung on longer than I did. And I felt like I gave him a lot of leash, of trying to set, buying some time. I wasn't expecting him to hit the ground running, right? The fact of the matter is he's coming back from a significant surgery. You're off that amount of time. You're not seeing live pitching. Like you're going to have to adjust. What concerned me is I felt like it got pretty late into the season, and we hadn't really even seen like too many flashes, right? Like he didn't necessarily put together like a strong week. And I thought, okay, like there it is. Like it's still there. He can kind of turn things around. It was like 1 or 2 games maybe, and then struggles again. And then maybe one good game and then struggles.
And you know what, to that point, Matt, like if Max hadn't gotten hurt, if Chris Taylor was not a complete embarrassment for the better part of the season, stuff like that, Lux might not have even gotten the opportunities at a certain point. Like that's how uncompetitive his at bats were. But I think that so many other guys were so bad. Kike Hernandez included. That you could name a whole bunch of guys. But the fact that everybody was so bad meant that they kept running him out there. And I think Dave's quote early on was something like, let's give him whatever it was, 150 plate appearances or something like that, and then we'll judge. Well, the runway's been a whole lot longer than that, but it's been because everybody else was terrible. Guys are starting to come around now, it looks like, but for Lux, that's a guy that I think they really want to get going because they held him out of trades in the past. He was their untouchable guy. They've really tried to make him a pillar of what this team can be going forward, and he has not answered it yet. We'll see. Obviously the jury's still out. The question is it time to believe in him? It's time to have hope.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And I think what's an interesting layer to all of this too is you said it. The Dodgers, they need Gavin Lux to get productive, even if it's just league average at this point, right? Salvage your season that way. If he starts to do that, though, the domino effect means keeping Mookie Betts at shortstop. And sure, maybe you finish this season with that, but then still moving forward, like, is that really the answer? And so it's just kind of an interesting, like, it's almost a double-edged sword, right? Like you need and want Gavin Lux to start producing, but if he does, and you keep him at, like, he's going to be playing second base. He's not playing any other position. That then means unless the Dodgers move Mookie back to right field, he's going to be your shortstop, which I think we saw some negative effects to that.
Yeah, I think so. That wasn't a great experiment. I think you can write it out for the rest of the season. Maybe Mookie comes back in September and he's, pretty refreshed. Even if he comes back in August, I think he'll be okay. They can address that issue later on. I think, though, that yes, you do have to play Gavin at second base because I've said this and I've said this a bunch of times. I think Miguel Rojas, for as much of a cult favorite as he's become, he's in the role that he's in for a reason. And it's not a guy that you would want to run out there for 500, 600 plate appearances in a season. He's been admirable in what they've asked him to do so far this year, but he's better in the role that they originally had him slotted in. And so if Lux can produce and keep Rojas in that position where, maybe he's still going to play a bunch because he's going to be a defensive replacement at some point. He's going to get some starts here or there. So, I don't think it's like he disappears, but that's going to be a fairly decent, good problem to have if Lux puts them in that position.
Yeah. And at least the long-term concern, you worry about that later. You just get through this season.
You try to win this one now, this year, and you will figure that out in the winter.
Yeah, definitely. But hey, like we said, credit to Gavin Lux for at minimum giving reason for hope. We had some super chats during that conversation. I apologize and thank you everybody for being patient. A couple of them are about Lux, so let's work backwards. Cordenaz with another one says, "Love the Lux praise. He's been getting it done." Yeah, I think it. We will be critical of players when they're struggling and point out those types of things. And so when they're on an upswing, it's only right that we're balanced and recognize some of the turnaround that we're seeing. And that is certainly with Gavin Lux. 300 GJW answered our question. Lux is playing well, but I do not trust him.
Yeah.
I understand there's reason, right? There's reason to be skeptical. That's fair.
Yeah.
But hey, yeah. But it's better, at least, like, I still am going to land on, and I know you would probably agree, it's better that he's having these 5 games as opposed to an extension of what we saw in the first half. Because if he came out of the All-Star break still scuffling, everybody would be up in arms. The Dodgers would probably, I don't want to say be in panic mode, but it would basically be another potential position that they'd have to address.
For sure. And I think that's the big part of it. If they can keep him there and he can be serviceable, it's one less hole that they have to address in the next week or so. Because in all honesty, when you have the other needs that they have, they don't want to have to continue to try to plug and plug and plug when they came into the season thinking they had several options to do that.
Yeah. And I'm not even fully convinced that they'll end up addressing all their needs at the deadline. I mean, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
If you have more than 2 needs, it's hard to sort of get that done with one trade deadline. Now, maybe back in the day when you could do the waiver stuff and you had, through August to kind of figure things out. But now that it's just the one deadline, makes it a little bit harder. And speaking of deadline and trades, Good Vibrations wants to know, are you ready to trade River Ryan, Landon Knack, plus one more for Randy Arozarena? So we haven't completely jumped into the Arozarena stuff yet. We are going to get to that. Anthony, is that a package you think the Dodgers would have to part with, would be willing to part with? Man,
it feels like a lot.
I agree.
It feels like a lot for Arozarena. You're looking at in Ryan and Knack, 2 guys who may very well end up being, in that opening day rotation next season. Arozarena fills a need that they have. But to give up that much major league ready pitching depth, let's assume River Ryan is going to be big league ready at the start of next season, or at least ready to compete for a job. That feels like a lot to give up for Arozarena. And like I said, I understand that there's a need there, and he feels it, and he's been hitting the ball a lot better the last month and a half or so. Man, if you could knock one of those guys off, then you got my ears a little bit. I think that feels like a little too much to me personally right now.
Yeah, I don't even know if the Dodgers include River Ryan and it maybe in a Screwball deal. I think I could see that.
That's a different thing for sure.
And even, the Rays have some, I know Eflin's name has been thrown around a little bit. Even if we were to include, Eflin in this deal with Arozarena, I still don't think the Dodgers are going to part with River Ryan in that deal. Like, I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think they're getting enough back. Landon Knack, I could see them trading at some point. And in this type of deal, I could see that happening. But also, from the Rays standpoint, are they going to want necessarily Landon Knack if they have a comp in Ryan Pepio, who they just got from the Dodgers, right? Not that long ago. And I know Pepio's injured, so yeah, I mean, that's tough. And we'll get into more Arozarena stuff, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I also think they're not really in a position to be trading away from, to be trading starting pitching depth at this point, because that's also a need. And if they can't land somebody like Crochet or Screwball, they're going to need a guy like Landon Knack. Very, very, it's very likely he ends up playing a big role coming down the stretch and possibly in the playoffs.
Yeah. And Good Vibrations adds a follow-up. He says he appreciates us, and I think we will have to overpay to have our needs met. I think that's fair, but River Ryan in that trade, I don't even know if that's an overpay. And I don't want to overreact. Like, it was just once River Ryan just made his MLB debut. He still is a prospect. You never know how these things are going to truly go. But factoring all that in, sort of projecting and valuing, the upside, I just don't see the Dodgers trading River Ryan unless they're getting a bona fide ace. And that would have to me, it'd have to be Screwball. I don't even think in a Garrett Crochet trade, River Ryan's going in that, because my concern with Crochet is this is his first time being a full-time starter. He's on his innings limit. Even if that trade is expanded to include Luis Robert Jr. and all that, I still am not convinced that the Dodgers would part with River Ryan. But hey, we have a week to see how all that stuff plays out. Let's stick to pitching, and I want to get Anthony's thoughts on the James Paxton news. Made his 18th start of the season on Sunday. Picked up a win. Got his $1 million bonus, and the next day the Dodgers said, "Hey, we're cutting you loose. We're DFA'd, and now you're going through waivers." A lot of interest. What was your kind of instant reaction to it? And has it changed? Has your perspective at all or thoughts kind of changed in the time since?
My first reaction was they did him a solid. I think they were probably ready to do this before. And, they said, hey, man, you've been a good soldier. We're going to do you this solid. We're going to get you to that 18th start. That $1 million bonus incentive kicks in, and then we'll decide. And, probably understanding that he was going to be DFA'd the whole time. There was no need for them to hang on to him any longer. He was not he was not going to be part of their plans in the future. He was not going to be part of their plans in October. And you might as well now start seeing what you got, for September and October with guys like River Ryan. So yeah, I was not surprised. I was kind of waiting for that shoe to drop for a while now. But when it happened after that start, that was my first reaction was, they did right by him, which, it goes a long way because, players see this stuff. They really do. Whether it be guys who are looking to be traded out of their current organizations or free agents, little things like that, they matter. It does. And then, and if somebody says, if James Paxton knows somebody and, they're working out in the off season and, the guy he's working out with is a free agent, he says, hey, how was that over there? And he was like, yeah, I didn't perform very well, but, they're good people over there. Like, it was probably good business for that $1 million to be spent that way if it buys them some goodwill around the league. So, yeah, I was good with the DFA. I was good with them doing right by Paxton.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, we saw something similar play out with Gonsolin. He pitched injured, and I know Gonsolin and the Dodgers have both claimed that his injury didn't necessarily get worse as he was going on, and it was more of a recent thing, but he clearly wasn't right when he was, trying to push through that. He reached, I forgot what the exact incentive was, but he reached it with his final start, and then boom, all of a sudden, oh, he's on the IL. Oh, he's having season-ending surgery. So we have seen this in the past where, the Dodgers front office, I think, does try to look out for the player. I think another factor, too, is the Dodgers understand by Paxton reaching that bonus with them, not only does it build goodwill, like you said, if players talk to each other about when they're potentially going to be signing with a new team, but it also, in my estimation, sort of increases his trade value. The Dodgers have taken care of all the extra financial obligations at this point. Yeah. Paxton is owed, I think, around $1.5 million for the rest of the season. There are a lot of teams that need starting pitching. He hasn't missed a start yet. Him and Gavin Stone are the only pitchers who made every turn in the rotation so far this year. There's an innings eater kind of for $1.5 million.
His value went up. Absolutely. It cost them $1 million, but his value went up. They may get a couple of low-level, long shot prospects out of this thing. And that's totally fine. I mean, it's kind of a win, considering what Paxton was for them. I know the Red Sox are rumored to be in on him. And it seems like his market is not going to be thin. Like there's going to be teams who probably come knocking. The Red Sox thing is they want him for down the stretch against the Yankees. So the Yankees aren't very good against lefties, but he's going to have a market. The Dodgers will probably get something for him, assuming he clears, and business.
Yeah. And I did see a lot of different questions and criticism. If I could find them, I'll put them up on the screen, but basically questioning why the Dodgers did that to Paxton when they were, in their estimation, other pitchers, mainly relievers, who could have done it. The trade deadline is a factor here. The Dodgers, if they waited to DFA Paxton after the trade deadline, you're going to lose him for nothing because he's going to get claimed on waivers. And at that point, you're going to have to basically give him away. Whereas now, doing it at the beginning of the week, you have up until, I think, a full week. So basically Monday to work out a trade with the team and figure that out. Whereas some of the other guys, you're more willing to DFA maybe a depth reliever and just lose him on waivers because, yes, you have, Kershaw coming back and Gratterall coming back and hopefully Yamamoto coming back.
Yeah, and I see some people in the chat saying like, he's their only healthy guy. It was silly to get rid of him, and you're not sure what Glasnow and Kershaw are going to be in, all of that stuff. And it's fair, but he was getting hammered. I mean, it was shots fired every time somebody swung the bat against him at this point. And you know what? If someone's going to be bad, let it be a guy like River Ryan or somebody like that, so that you can at least start to see what you got and get these guys a little experience, because what Paxton was not that dude. And at this point, he wasn't even an innings eater, because it was a struggle for him to get, 12 outs was a struggle.
Yeah, the walks were an issue for him all season long. I think I looked up when we were writing about it, his game logs. I think he issued at least 2 walks in something like 15 out of 18 starts this season. Yeah. And that was always the discussion. Scott and I did a post-game show after one of Paxton's starts where he had like 4 or 5 walks, but somehow it only allowed like 1 run or something. And we said, look, like in some cases he's pitching out of jam, so give him credit for that. In other cases, he's getting extremely lucky, and that luck is probably going to run out at some point. But
yeah, his peripherals were really bad. Those numbers were really bad all season long. And the run prevention was, a lot of luck based. That stuff just doesn't last when the other stuff isn't there.
Yeah. But like you said, credit to Paxton for, being there for the Dodgers when they needed him throughout the first half of the season. Like I said, him and Gavin Stone made every start in the rotation. And they're the only ones who have done it for the Dodgers so far. All right, let's move on to our final topic before we'll open it up to some questions. And actually, let me pause this because we have a huge super chat from David, $100. I'm pretty sure this is a record. I don't think we've had a super chat this big. So David, I appreciate that. We appreciate it. He says, I totally want to apologize to Jeff Spiegel and Anthony, the Paisan Witrado, and the rest of the crew for not participating in the Food Talk podcast from last week. If you knew what I was doing, you'd understand. He put a winking emoji. This is, I guess it's late night on YouTube, so we don't need to, we won't dive into trying to figure out what the emoji is. But hey, David, no problem for missing the food podcast. We hope that you went back and at least watched it or listened to it. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I learned Anthony doesn't like avocados, which was interesting.
I could do without them. I wouldn't say I don't like it. It's not a hate thing. Like mayonnaise, I hate. It's not a hate thing with avocados. It's just, I can do without them. But no worries, David. We'll continue to send food pictures on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. And during the off season, if we need to fill content again, if there's more food angles we can kind of come up with, if you guys enjoyed it that much, we'll be happy to do it. I see people joking that I need to show some skin now. I don't want to get our YouTube stream shut down, so I'm going to keep my shirt on. Anthony's going to keep his clothes on as well. And we're going to talk some Randy Arozarena. As I've mentioned, we're 1 week from the trade deadline, and there's a lot of speculation involving the Dodgers. The majority of that has really centered around starting pitching, but there are reports that they also are looking for an impact outfielder as one of their priorities also. And according to Mark Feinsand of MLB.com, the Dodgers are, the way he worded a quote said, the source said they're, quote, all in with Randy Arozarena. Anthony, prior to this, Luis Robert Jr. was probably the biggest outfielder the Dodgers were being linked to. Assuming all things are relatively equal, which I know that they're not, is Arozarena, you think, the better target for the Dodgers?
I do think so. They have enough injury concerns and risk on this roster without adding Luis Robert, even though his ceiling is higher than Arozarena's. I'm with this. If that's the guy they've targeted and that's the guy they're going to try to go get, I'm for it. Like we said, I don't think they need to put two pitching, two major league ready or close to major league ready pitching prospects in that deal. But yes, I would love if Arozarena came over. I think not only is it a great, he fills a hole and fills a need for this roster, but I think, and this makes a difference. In my opinion, this makes a difference where he's going to come in, feels like a fine culture fit, right? Like a fine guy in the clubhouse. Never heard anything bad about him. He seems like a fun dude. I really believe this fan base would love him. And there's something to be said about that. Guys feel comfortable immediately and they tend to perform. And so, I think his ties to the Mexican national team, Even though he's Cuban, he's got residency in Mexico. Him playing there has made him familiar with a lot of the fan base, the belt buckles, the cowboy boots, the cowboy, all of that stuff kind of plays with this Los Angeles fan base. And so I think that he's just he feels like a really good fit. So I'm all for that trade. I do hope they figure out a way to pull it off and not have to overpay for him. Because I do think the way he's playing right now, they need him. They need a guy like him.
Yeah, and Tim G, I've seen some people, but Tim specifically says Arozarena's season numbers look bad, but the last 30 games are pretty good, and that's something that Scott Gearman, our Scott, of course, says Randy's been unbelievable since June 1st. He's back. Yeah. Arozarena has, yes, the season as a whole hasn't been. It's been a little bit of a struggle for him, but the Dodgers more so than, or at least as much as any other front office, look at the overall track record. They're not going to get too overly consumed or concerned with just the one season or the one stretch that maybe is happening this year. I saw other people mentioning, bringing up great points, which I was going to reference. Arozarena also has the postseason history and success. So he's been on that stage before, which for me, especially, like anything the Dodgers do at the deadline right now is about the playoffs. Like they could make no moves to their roster and just say, oh, Kurt Glasnow's coming back on Wednesday. Kershaw's back on Thursday. Bueller's back whenever he is. Bobby Miller is going to be back up with us after a couple more starts. Mookie's going to be coming back from his fractured hand. We're not making, and they would run away with the NL West. So everything right now that we're discussing, is for October. And Arozarena, I think there's value there. And having seen, a guy go through the postseason, that's something that Luis Robert hasn't been able to experience because the White Sox obviously aren't very good.
And Arozarena did it right in Andrew Friedman's face.
Yeah.
He did it in that 2020 World Series against them and against everybody that Tampa Bay played in that postseason. But like I said, he feels a need. It feels like a good fit. I like it. Like Scott mentioned too, since June 1st, he's been really good. His overall numbers, they haven't caught up because he was really bad at the start of the season, but he's turned it around for sure.
Yeah, and I see. So we shot down those trade ideas earlier. I've seen Aaron, I think, has commented this a couple times. He says Outman and Knack for Arozarena. I mean, sure, yes. I think the Dodgers do that in a heartbeat. I don't think the Rays are saying yes to that. I think they're going to probably want some more. Because another thing to consider, Arozarena, another positive with him is that he's under team control for 2 more seasons through arbitration. So he wouldn't be a free agent until after the 2026 season. So if the Rays, and I think what we also need to bring up is that the Rays are sort of in we're going to potentially sell, but we're also going to do maybe a little bit of buying. And so Arozarena may be somebody they decide to keep for whatever reason. They're not going to lose him after this year, so there isn't huge incentive. But my counter to that, and same thing with some of the other players the Dodgers have been linked to, is these teams, if you sell now, as much as Arozarena has sort of struggled early in the year, he's trending up, and you can tell a team, look, you get multiple postseason runs with him instead of hanging on to him in his free agency year, and then it's just that one fall run.
Right. Yeah, he's not a rental. It'll be interesting what the price is for him because, like you said, Tampa Bay is sort of on that parallel track mode right now where they are trying to get rid of some guys, but they're trying to still compete in that division. So very interesting to see kind of what those rumors come out to be, in a few days about what he costs. The Dodgers have the capital to get him. It's just how much they're willing to give up because parades over prospects, and I'm a believer in that too. But there's other needs that they have to fill too, and so how you sort of put everybody out there and what you spend where, is definitely going to have an effect.
Yeah. So Aaron, he did, since we not called out his first proposal, he did revise it. He says I'd throw in Cartaya. So Cartaya, Outman, Knack for Randy Arozarena. I think that gets it a little bit closer. I also think that the Dodgers are probably, if they're going to be trading for Arozarena, we've seen this in the past where they'll look at the team's roster and say, hey, okay, like you mentioned, what about this starter? What about this reliever? And they'll just try to sort of address their needs in one fell swoop. Like that's arguably a little bit easier in some cases than trying to do one trade here, one trade there, and then another trade with another team. Like, if you can find a team that sort of fills multiple needs and you just knock it down, and in that instance, I can see the Dodgers adding, 3, 4, 5 players, either major league experience and or prospects at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, they did it. They did it with the Nationals. I mean, that was more of a big time blockbuster with Scherzer and Turner. But if you can get it all done, if you can get all your shopping done at one store, you're going to do that. And then both teams seem to be more flexible typically in those kinds of situations too. And so neither team feels like they got fleeced necessarily, right? Like, and so those usually work out well in that way. So maybe Tampa Bay has everything they need. We'll see. But yeah, I'm all in on the Randy deal.
What about so Monty Margot says Pepio and Randy package? This is something that I did tell the guys. I was joking with them. I was saying, hey, like, maybe the Dodgers should just ask for Ryan Pepio back. I'm pretty sure he's hurt right now, so that's a downside to that potential. But is there a scenario where maybe you see Ryan Pepio coming back if maybe the Rays get somebody like Landon Knack or another pitching prospect?
I mean, I haven't even looked at Pepio's what he's done.
It's been a little. He's comparable to Knack. The results are somewhat similar. Pepio has better strikeout numbers, but they've been pretty similar this season.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they like him.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's something I would listen to. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but again, if they're going to move one of those starting pitchers, they got to get pitching in return. It can't just be a starting pitcher who is actually in the rotation currently for a position player, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, we're getting closer by the day. We're 1 week out from the trade deadline, so certainly some activity should start to pick up. Let's open it up to questions now. And as a reminder, if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, it makes it easier for Anthony and I to spot it as we're scrolling through the comments. And while we wait for those to come in, Anthony, today it was I think Women's Night. I don't know if it was International Women's Night or just Women's Night at the stadium, but the players let their significant others pick their walk-up songs and entrance songs. So if your significant other was picking a song for you, which one do you think it would be? Or at least the artist. I know this is putting you on the spot a little bit.
Oh, she would pick some country for me that she likes.
Would you be on board with that, or would you want something else?
I don't listen to country music. So I could not tell you what song it might be, but it would definitely be country. And she would be trolling me. Very much like I assume Chris Taylor's wife was trolling him when he walked out to I Will Always Love You.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some interesting choices. The choices this year I think were okay. Last year, I think it was a better selection of them. All right, here we have some questions. Cordonez says, how do you guys feel about Kershaw coming back? So if you haven't heard, some Kershaw's coming off the 60-day IL Thursday. It's an afternoon start at Dodger Stadium, the finale of the 4-game series against the Giants. 3 rehab starts for Kershaw. 1 was in June, had the shoulder soreness. He was shut down for a little bit, then made 2 starts with Oklahoma City. Stretched out. He could probably get into the 5th inning maybe for the Dodgers, at least complete 4, depending on pitch count, adrenaline, stuff like that. But how are you feeling with Kershaw's 2024 debut almost being here?
Yeah, I'm excited. If you're a Dodger fan, it's hard not to be excited just because, we've grown up and matured and gotten old with this guy. He's been the face of the franchise for so long, and he's been so good for so long. So, and he was good when he's been healthy, last year and the year before. So yeah, I mean, not only am I excited to see him back because it's Clayton Kershaw, but I think that if he can reach, Jeff's comment was he's awesome at a 3.5 ERA. We said that's not awesome, but still at a 3.5 ERA, I'll take that. Like that's if he can land there over the course of who knows 10 starts or something like that, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I agree with you. I think it's exciting to see him back. Hopefully he can pitch well just for his sake, because I know he's somebody who he's given so much to the franchise, and his injury last year was really unfortunate, and pitching through it in the playoffs, and that was a complete disaster. But I mean, the Dodgers really did not have any other option. So yeah, it'll be nice to see. Hopefully he is, healthy. He has said his shoulder is fixed, and so could be something that's just behind him at this point. Eddie says, who will be the Dodgers' top 3 starters in the postseason? I'm going Glass now, a trade acquisition, and then Kershaw in game 3. Or the trade acquisition is game 3. Like those two, I think could flip flop. I've expressed before, I'm skeptical with Yamamoto. I don't know if Bobby Miller or Walker Buehler will pitch their way into a top 3 spot. Gavin Stone enters the equation a little bit because I do think they would want him to make his postseason start at home. So let's say they don't necessarily get an ace. I could see Stone starting a game 2. But I think I'll go Glass now, trade guy, and then Kershaw.
Okay. I'll say I'm going to assume Yamamoto's healthy.
Okay.
And I'll go Glass now, Yamamoto, trade acquisition, Kershaw.
Okay. So Gavin Stone not factoring in then?
Here's the thing. I think if all things are equal, and if Kershaw gives them, let's say, that 3.5 ERA over the course of 8-10 starts, something like that, then I think they start him. I think they give him the ball. I think and they point to his veteran presence and he's fresh and yada yada. They do all that's how they sell it. I don't know if that's the right decision because Gavin Stone's been really good. I don't know if that's the right decision, but I think that's what it would be, and I think that's how they would probably sell it. But yeah, Glass now, Yamamoto, trade guy, Kershaw.
And I think what also depends too is if, I know this question didn't specify, but if the Dodgers get into the NLCS and or the World Series and those are best of 7, Dave Roberts are, at least I know that there's maybe some skepticism from you, but at least for now, Dave Roberts has said the Dodgers are not starting Yamamoto more than once in a series. So in the NLDS, I could see maybe Gavin Stone getting bumped out of the rotation. But in the NLDS, if they advance the NLCS, I think maybe the door does open if that becomes a longer series. So that could be a factor as well.
Yeah. I think it's possible. And again, that assumes that my 4 picks there assume Kershaw performs when he comes back.
Here we have a question from David. Is it really a possibility of us getting a frontline pitcher and a stud hitter this year? I think so, because if you look at the White Sox, I mean, I guess it depends how you define a stud hitter, because the two kind of dynamic outfielders the Dodgers have been linked to have not necessarily, I know Arozarena has gotten better of late, but overall this season, they haven't really torn the cover off the ball, him and Luis Robert. But yeah, I think, would I be completely shocked if the Dodgers did a pitcher and if they crochet, I guess, for all intents and purposes, and Luis Robert with the White Sox? No. Same thing with Arozarena and maybe a Zach Eflin. Not completely. So I could see it maybe happening that way. Like we agreed earlier, if you can get all your trades done with one team, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think those possibilities exist with the White Sox and the Rays. Obviously, it probably costs a bit more. I'm sorry, not the Rays. They don't have the pitcher, but it exists with the White Sox. Obviously, costs a bit more. So we'll see. I think it depends on your definition of a stud hitter a little bit. If we're going to say Arozarena is that, and we're going to say Robert is that, and we're going to call Crochet a frontline kind of guy, then they have the assets to get it done. It's just how much are they willing to spend, and do they feel like they have other needs, like this back into the bullpen situation? Yeah. How concerning is it for them at this point? Do they think Gratterall coming back is really going to fix things, or do they feel like they need somebody else? So it's going to depend on how they want to disperse their assets and what they are prioritizing in terms of like real need.
Yeah. Obi-Wan, not a question, but just wanted to say hello. Thanks, guys, as always, for an excellent show. Much appreciated. Obi-Wan, thank you for the nice comment. Yeah. I know Anthony and I, we enjoy doing this for you guys. We enjoy all the interaction. We have the easy job. You guys tuning in and sticking with us, that's much harder. And we definitely appreciate everybody who is in here. We have over 1,200 people right now watching this show. Thinking of Nothing says, who do you think will be moved out of the active roster when Glasnow and Kershaw come back? The Glasnow one, I could see it being maybe one of the rookies, probably River Ryan, even though they've said that River Ryan has earned another start, but also have sort of hedged it and said, like, that's kind of the plan for now. I could see the plan quickly changing with Glasnow coming back and just needing to clear a roster space. The Kershaw one's a little bit trickier because they need to make a 40-man move as well. So that's where I think maybe we're looking at a DFA with one of the depth reliever pieces that, there's a lot of Johan Ramirez comments earlier when we were talking about James Paxton. So I could see it being somebody along those lines. Are there any two pitchers that, or maybe three if they do two moves for Kershaw, but anybody sticking out in your mind?
Yeah, probably Ramirez. It feels like that might be most likely there. And then as a guy you pull down, maybe Roleski. I could see that.
Or I wonder if for Glasnow tomorrow, do they just do Landon Knack since he just pitched?
That's a possibility.
Send him down.
Yeah, I mean, they can get creative with this for a little while. Just because somebody maybe goes down now doesn't mean like they're down for good, that kind of thing. And they're going to try to give guys like, assuming Yamamoto comes back, him, Kershaw, they're going to try, probably even Glasnow, they're going to try to give them as much rest as they can. So, they may be in a situation where they're juggling a 6-man rotation too.
Yeah. And that is, so that Dave Roberts did address that before the game tonight. He said it is a possibility. He did also note that they do have a lot of off days coming up soon. And so that would make it a little bit tricky just because then not only a 6-man rotation obviously means extra rest. And then when you layer in off days, it's even more rest and then it could throw the pitchers off. But yeah, a 6-man rotation, I feel like is something they've kicked around dating back to last year and then the beginning of this season when it looked like they were going to have too many pitchers. So yeah, maybe once and for all, they'll finally get everybody back healthy and enough pitchers to maybe do something like that. Let's see. We'll answer a couple more here. Cordenez wants to know, have you been happy with the offensive production from the bottom of the lineup recently? Kike's had some big hits against the Red Sox. Gavin Lux, we touched on earlier. Chris Taylor is sort of still riding a roller coaster, I feel like.
It's been better.
It's been fine. Better.
It's helped that some of these hits have been high leverage hits and, kind of spotlight hits. Kike Hernandez, Gavin Lux, So, yeah, it helps the perception for sure. I haven't looked at the numbers. I don't think they've necessarily been good, but they've been better. And in all honesty, that's what we've been asking for months, right? Like just be a little better. Like don't be a sinkhole that, as soon as, name the number 6 hitter is done with his at bat, we change the channel. Just don't be that. And I think they've been better in that way at least.
Yeah. All right. Maybe we'll end with this one. Aaron wants to know, are we all amped up for the Asterisk series? He's, of course, referencing the Dodgers playing the Astros this weekend. So there are still 2 more games with the Giants to get through before the Dodgers get on their planes and head over to Houston. Anthony, how do you view the Astros in light of, obviously, everything?
I will despise that organization for the rest of my life. And like it, not speaking hyperbolic or anything, no hyperbole here. That was probably that was the most heartbreaking sports. It wasn't just one moment; it was a bunch of them. But it was the most heartbreaking sports experience I've ever been through in my life that I can remember. That was absolutely brutal. I did not watch a lot of Dodgers baseball that next season. For me, that's like, I watched like 100 games. But, I was so deflated and so like, it just felt like I was beat down as a fan. And then the scandal came out and just made it that much worse because then it felt like it got stolen. I'm with Suze. I don't think I'll ever get over that. And I remember the start of that Darvish Game 7 and just breaking, not breaking down like crying, but just like breaking down, like saying, you know what, it feels inevitable now, and just like sinking into the chair and going, how did this happen?
Yeah. It's I'm with you. It's not anything I'll ever like really truly get over. And I think one reason, like, it's not even just the act of like what they did, but then it was a lot of the stance and kind of arrogance, I guess, for lack of a better word, that the players took. And then Rob Manfred got involved and somehow managed to make it so much worse with his comments and around the situation. And then too, you layer in, like, that was, Dodgers had a great team that year, but like Kershaw was still like very, very good. And that was his opportunity to really, break free, get the playoff monkey off his back.
Yeah.
And
there's so much happened in that series. Like Kenley was in his prime, right? He was an elite closer at that time. And I think he blew Game 2. Mm-hmm. And then the whole, what was it, Game 5 or Game 6, the one that was just absolutely wild, whatever that was. I think 5. He blew one in that game too. Yeah, I don't even like to talk about it and all. Like, it was, and it's funny because like I think for all 4 losses, I remember where I was and what I was doing when they lost those games. Like the wins, like, I mostly, I think I kind of remember them, but like very distinctly remember all 4 losses in that series, where I was and how it felt when they lost. Because they were all like, they were all crushing defeats, it felt like.
Yeah. Dark times, but hey, at least, fortunately the Dodgers were able to get one in 2020, and they've been in contention for more since then. It hasn't necessarily happened. Maybe this year will be when they can get over the hump again. But like I said, there's still 2 more games against the Giants before we can shift our attention to the Astros series this weekend. And we will have more live shows for you guys planned tomorrow night. I'm on, it'll probably be, actually, Blake's going to be at the stadium, so maybe I'll see if Daniel can hop on with me tomorrow night. Thursday, I think it'll be Blake and I back. He's going to be at the stadium covering Kershaw's start, so we'll give him enough time to fight some of the LA traffic getting home because of the 1:10 game. It makes it a little bit harder during the week with navigating that. And then Anthony and I will be back Friday night. It'll be after the first Astros game, so hopefully we're not having to revisit too many daunting memories, and it can be a fun one. But again, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We got up to almost 1,300 people in here. We've appreciated the support you guys have shown us all throughout the season last year, but especially the past almost 2 weeks as we've done more of these live shows. You guys have really joined us and made them a lot of fun. So definitely, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, if you're new, please be sure to do that. Hit the like button on this video specifically, ring the notification bell, subscribe, all that good stuff. Again, that's Anthony. I'm Matthew, and we'll see you next time.